Although, is that,
Phones off.
is
Professor?
that not a little bit bizarre?
I don't
Well,
know.
we'll have a title card.
Yeah, yeah, we
We'll have
definitely have
a
that.
name card that'll say Dr. Rafi.
Right, right,
Right.
right. So to do that in the interview might be a little stilted, I think.
Right, do I need to introduce myself as such?
You need
No,
to
no, it
introduce
will be,
yourself.
it will be in the, the credits and everything.
Oh, okay.
It will say that.
So I don't need, okay,
No.
because that's always weird to me to be like, hi, I'm
All right,
Professor
okay.
so-and-so.
I'll start. So, thank you, Dr. Diotti.
Oh, this camera.
We're rolling. We're rolling, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Diotti, for coming here and wanting to talk about a practice that you piloted. Is it okay if I call you Rafi?
Absolutely, you can call me Rafi.
Okay. So, Rafi, one day you came into the office of the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Educational Technologies with an issue. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I came into the CTLET with an issue. I was teaching my first online class, and I was trying to figure out how to give the midterm in a final in a way that would cater to my students. Obviously, they're taking an online class, which means that they may have some scheduling issues. And usually, my understanding was that the midterm and the final were actually written and taken at the college site, and I was trying to figure out if there was a more flexible way to offer this test so that it would make it easier for my students who have jobs and family to be able to take them, and also to make sure that it was as fair as possible for everybody.
So, mainly you were looking for a practical solution to a scheduling problem. And what was that? What did you find as a solution?
Well, we were looking for a practical solution to this scheduling problem, and I was talking to the people in the office, and it turns out I did not grow up in this country. I grew up in a different country where we have oral interrogation. So we were wondering, and it was suggested that maybe we could set up something similar for the class, allowing the student to take their individual final and scheduling it at times that were convenient for them and for their lives. And so we would remove the proctoring problem, we would remove the scheduling problem, finding a room 2 different times during the semester when everything is already has already been scheduled. The other possibility was for the students to come in one of the offices where they could take the final, but again, the practical problem would have been that then we have all these people taking final at different times. And again, most of the offices are open from 9 to 5. So the idea was, okay, why don't we do it what for me was the old way? We can provide questions to the students, give them sometimes to prepare, 15, 20 minutes, and then we could have a face-to-face final online on Blackboard Collaborate where I would ask the question and probe a little more. And what I set up was actually 3 different questions for a time of 15, 20 minutes for the students to answer.
Oh, that was a lot of information. So, can you explain again how it exactly it worked? How the so you set up a scheduling for the students? How did that work?
So
the scheduling for the exam, to take the exam and to prepare the exam. Is that right?
Yes, so these are the way that I set up the scheduling. Well, first of all, I have asked the students if they were willing to do it because it was something novel. As far as I knew, nobody else had done it before, so we were all, I wanted to make sure everybody was willing to take the risk and the challenge. And I actually had a very positive response for the students. Most of them loved it because then they didn't have to think about trying to find time from work and family. So after we all agreed that that was a good idea, well, that was the midterm, and that was really the trial run. And that took quite some time because I wasn't sure how to do the scheduling, so I was doing the scheduling one-on-one with the different students. We were going back and forth with the email, trying to figure out when it was a good time for them to do it. I did give them a weekend Saturday and Sunday because I thought that that was the best time. But I did have to do it also during the week, a couple of evening, because a lot of my students actually work the full weekend, which is why they were very happy to have this freedom. So that was really time consuming.
Yeah.
And then the time of the exam came. So the way that it was set up, I was trying to give myself enough time for the person to connect, give them the questions, then they could have their 15-20 minutes to prepare, and then they could come back. And that was a little of a mess because, you know, there's always some technical issues. The students were trying to get them collaborate. They were not succeeding. So the timing was a little off. We still work it out. Because if a student was logging in when I was still giving the midterm to someone else, I would just ask, can you wait another 5 minutes, can you come back? So it was actually all very pleasant, and we worked it out, everybody was flexible. But I was like, okay, the final, I need a better strategy. This was nice, everybody loved it, let's try to do it better.
So how were things better at the final?
So for the final, I spoke with the people at the CTLET and
With Wen Ying?
Hmm?
You spoke with Wen Ying?
with Wenying, and we came up with a strategy. I also was a little more familiar with Blackboard, which made my life somewhat easier. So I actually set up an open schedule on a wiki. It was a document that the students could edit. I gave them specific times and specific days, but I gave them still the freedom. I was like, if these dates really and these times don't work for you, please let me know, and I'll make sure that we can fit you in. Most of them didn't have any problems. There was just one student initially that asked me, can I actually have it later? I worked the whole day on Sunday, and I was like, yeah, that's not a problem. So they put in the dates and the time that worked for them. Once I knew the date and the times, I already set up some questions for them. So approximately 15 questions taken from the different chapters that we're covering for the final. So I set them up as essay as a test in Blackboard, and Blackboard gives you the chance to choose specific people and open the test for them a certain amount of time. So for each different person, I chose the date and the time. 20 minutes before they were supposed to take the test, I opened the test for them. They could see the questions. Automatically, Blackboard would close them down after those 20 minutes. After that, I gave a couple of minutes to make sure for them to be able to get on Collaborate so we could start the final. And that actually worked out very well.
Wow, that is really precise and timed, and
It took some time, but we worked it out.
it's worked well.
And it worked well for the students. Really enjoyed to have the freedom to see the questions,
Mhm.
because again, before when we were trying to do everything at the same time, we discovered things like you put the question on Collaborate, but if the person turns it off to go and look at the question disappears. They do not see the chat anymore. So
Mm.
there were some technical things that we discovered on the way.
Okay, so but at the final, all that was
The final was actually very good and very smooth. You know, some small technical issues with students that were still, figuring out, some of like, oh, what do you mean? What is the final? I'm like, it's in the quizzes. Just go there. But I would say it went really smooth.
So all in all, did this cost you more time of preparation, or would you say
No,
the time of
it really cut down on the time, because once I created the table where they could put in the time they wanted to take the final, the question was just put in literally cut and paste the essay question in the testing. I set it up as an essay question.
I'm sorry, not to cut you off. Can you ask that question again? Can you ask it again, and can you just put that question in the beginning of your answer?
Okay,
Right.
what was the question? I already
Yeah,
forgot
okay,
it.
yeah, exactly. I was thinking the same thing. What was the time of preparation for this kind of procedure?
So the time of preparation for this kind of procedure was actually very contained.
So, I shouldn't have said procedure. the time of preparation for this.
For setting up the final.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, can you talk a little bit about the time of preparation for setting up the final in this way?
Well, the time of preparation for setting up the final was much more contained than what happened with the midterm, because all I had to do was to create this table that I put on Wiki with the choice of times and of dates. The students went in filling their names, so once I did the table, that was done. For the test, I just took the chosen 15 questions. I had to create essay question, but again, it's cut and paste. You have your questions on Word, you just put them in. I chose to do essay because some of my students wanted to be able to write something as they were reviewing the questions. And once that was done, I set up random blocks, edited the test so that I could put in the specific time the test was open for the students. That probably was done, I don't know, altogether maybe a couple of hours. That's even maybe stretching it. And it gave me the freedom, if there were some issues. I had one of my students that was stuck in an airport on Sunday. He was supposed to be back on time to take the final. He sent me an email and I'm like, I'm stuck at the airport, I don't know when I'm going to be back. All I had to do was go in, change the time that the test was available for him, and that was it. So it was nice and smooth.
Talking about time and correction of these exams,
Well, it
or
was
grading.
it was little
Repeat.
in terms of the time to actually correct the exams and give the grade. It was done at the time. I did record the session, but I had 3 questions and I was gauging how the student was answering the question. For the people that are very comfortable, as we all know, in 10-15 minutes maximum, not even, in 10 minutes I was done with the exam. For the one that had a little more issues, then I had the chance to ask some questions and probe a little and make them think, so maybe it was a little longer, but I would make notes and like, okay, question number 1, they were very comfortable. Question number 2, they were struggling, maybe they didn't know part of the questions, but they definitely knew the material. And what I did in the end, once I was done with the testing, I actually asked the students, how do you think you did? And what I was thinking in terms of grades was actually very similar to the way that they were grading themselves. And some of them did better in the final than in the midterm, and some of them did a little worse because they were pressed for time, and they were actually able to tell me, and they were like, oh, I think I didn't do as well as I did in the midterm, probably. And they were quite truthful and honest and quite on the spot about the grade that they deserve. So it was also good to have this exchange with them, because sometimes students think that it's unfair.
Great. So now we can move a little bit more to the pedagogical side of this. This was a practical solution to a practical problem. Can you talk a little bit about, you changed basically a written exam, an essay exam into an oral exam. Pedagogically, how do you see this pedagogically? Are there values to this? Better? Is this better?
I think that pedagogically this was, I think it was excellent actually, because the people that are comfortable with the material, they read the questions, they could answer the question, I could have a discussion with them about the topic.
I'm sorry. I think it, because you said it, so whatever it is, can you just say whatever it is?
If you think I remember what it was, you're greatly mistaken. What was it?
The students are comfortable with taking an exam orally or something.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
let's.
Can we
shall
restart, because
start
already
again?
Yeah, it's fine.
my brain doesn't register what I'm saying, you know? I
Right.
say it, it's gone, it's out in the
No,
ether.
I think this is really very good. You did this instead of you gave an oral exam instead of a written exam, and we talked about this until now as a practical solution to a practical problem. In what way is this? Can you compare the oral exam to the written exam in pedagogical terms?
I think that from a pedagogical point of view, the difference between the oral and the written exam is it's enormous. because on the written exam, that's your choice. That's what you have to answer. A lot of time I hear students saying, "Oh, I wasn't sure what you were asking," even if they're willing to ask the professor, "Oh, what does the question mean?" Sometimes they don't understand, and you can't explain without giving the information, the specific information. So you're kind of stuck. You want to help them. They don't know what's going on. Sometimes they misunderstand the questions, and they may know very well what they answer, but that's not the question that was asked. The oral exam gives you the choice to see what the student actually knows. The students that understand the topic, that are very comfortable, they will answer very fast. The exam is maybe 10, 15 minutes, and most of it is a happy discussion. You may even ask, "Oh, what do you think about this topic? What did you write in the discussion?" It's a very pleasant conversation, and it can be very short. For the students that struggle a little more, you have the chance to ask more probing questions. Some of the students that maybe were in the 80s, they were not specifically able maybe to answer the question. Some of the connections were still missing, but I had the chance to ask questions, and I could see that they knew the topic. They knew what they were talking about. There was an understanding that I think I would have not been able to see if it was a written exam. I was able to explore what maybe was not specifically in the question, but was still relevant for them to know. And something also that I found was that it was very useful for people that are second language, because for the midterm, I had at least a couple of students that were struggling. They were not comfortable at being in front of the camera and talking to the professor, which I see also in my classroom. Normally, they take some time for them to, like in classes, to get comfortable. But also sometimes it's difficult for them to understand the language of the questions. And during the oral exam, I had the chance to ask more specific and to the point questions, and they were able to follow through. They were able to show me that they actually understood the topic and they knew the topic, even if they maybe couldn't come up with a very lengthy explanation like the one I give. So it gave me the chance to be fairer towards the students that may have an understanding, but they may have a little more of a difficulty actually expressing themselves. So I thought that was great.
Fantastic. Yes. Did students report that they also study differently, that they learn in a different way?
Yes, they did. Some students didn't do too well during the
Did students learn differently?
Students actually reported that they learned differently and they studied differently for the test. Some of them during the midterm, and they were very honest. They told me, "I'm sorry, professor, I didn't do too well because I thought this was going to be easier." They thought, "Hey, she's going to give me questions. I'm going to have 15 minutes, 20 minutes to go over them. I don't need to study too much. I have the book here, I have my notes." And what they realize is that if you don't know what you're talking about, you can have all the books and the notes in front of you. I can even tell you, "Sure, you can take a look at your notes," but if you don't know what you're talking about, you cannot answer the question. So it was just funny to me that they said, "I realized that I actually have to study for this exam." And I was like, "Well, yes, you do, like for all exams." And I could see the difference the second time around, and I asked them, and they were like, "No, this time I studied." So, and I could see it, even if they were like, "Oh, can I just look at my notes?" Biology, a lot of it is technical language, so they were not sure about the words. They were like, "Oh, it starts with M. I don't remember, professor. Can I go and see?" But they knew where to go. It was just a 2 seconds, like a couple of pages. "Oh, this is the word." It was not what I saw in the beginning. They were, "Can I just look 1 second?" Like, well, you cannot really look through all the book. You should have known the answer. So, well, you can look, but I'm not going to be here the whole day waiting for you to restudy the material. So it was interesting, and some of them actually said it does make a difference when you have to explain to someone what the concept is. It was much harder than they thought, but they also enjoy being able to learn in that way because they felt as if they really understood what they were talking about. And I think the typical example, one of the questions was natural selection, and obviously as they're taking the notes, I'll write down the definition from the book. And then after they gave me the definition, I was like, so what do you think it really means? And most of them, they actually knew. They had to struggle to put it into words, but they had an understanding that I was not sure they had by them just repeating the definition. So I thought that that was very powerful.
Oh, that certainly is. Did you hear, what are other things that you heard from students' feedback that you got about this?
I think that one of the things that pleased me the most that the students said about this experience was that they felt that an online course a lot of time is kind of aseptic, and you don't have the connections with the people in the class, even if we try to set up these discussions. And some people were having very nice online discussion. For some of them was a little more of a struggle, but the fact that they could talk to me face to face, one of the students was like, oh, it's like having the full on-class experience because I'm actually talking to you and I can see your face. So they really felt that it made the course a little more personal, a little more real, because they had the chance to talk to me and express what they felt about the course and even some of the topics. One of the students was, and he's in the health profession, was like, oh, I just wanted to tell you this was such a great course because everybody in my family has heart disease, and I never thought that maybe there was a genetic component, so now the whole family is exploring. But he really enjoyed the fact that he could talk about this with me and say what worked and what didn't work about the course in person. So they like the personal touch.
In person, but through Blackboard Collaborate.
Through Blackboard, but you know, again, it was an exam, but it was more of a conversation about biology and the course, which is what makes it, again, maybe not even as stressful as an exam. Because you give them those couple of minutes, you know, so how are you doing? Are you ready for this? To just like decompress a little so that they can have a conversation. It's a conversation, you know, about a topic that we both share because we've been talking about it during the semester.
Fantastic. Suggestions for improvement, if you would repeat this?
OMG, yes, there are a lot of chances for improvement. I would definitely would like the students to have this experience before we have the exam, because there was an office hour that I set up, but again, what I discovered is that students that take these classes have very active schedules. So there isn't a specific good time for an office hour. I would still leave the office hour open, but I would create more chances for the students to connect with me throughout the weeks before I get to the midterm. I would probably make it mandatory for the first week to have a meeting, and in-class online meeting through Blackboard, so that I could meet them, they could meet me, and we start establishing this kind of relationship. And then for some of the discussion, or maybe just discussing the topic of the week, I would want to have some group meetings. Again, to get them used. Some of them were very shy in person, and they were shy also on camera. They also knew I was recording them for the midterm and for the final because I wanted to have a record. So they were a little uncomfortable. It depends from the personality. So getting them used to the fact that they will be on camera, I'm going to be asking some of these questions, would probably make it easier. And again, it would establish this kind of relationship, which is an in-class, in the building kind of feeling, even if they are at home and they are relaxed and you know, they come back from work, they don't have to worry about coming to York and at a specific time. So I would definitely put in this kind of improvement and make everybody a little more comfortable with the process.
Great. To finish, message to colleagues at York?
I think you should try it. I think that I felt the same way.
I think you should try it.
Okay, sorry. As a message to the colleagues at York, I think you should try this experience. I did have the same feeling as the students, that it was a little aseptic and impersonal, even if I tried to send announcements and messages and intervene in some of the discussions. I did have contact with some of the people through the office hour. but I really did enjoy some of the conversation, and even with the discussion, you can post a comment, you can do.
Got.
Okay. Sorry, can she just say?
Yeah, because this was confusing. It said
Oh,
you
sorry.
said this it was aseptic, and this meant just the online thing,
Yes.
right? And then you want to contrast with this exam. But I understood from the beginning it meant this
The online.
the online exam,
So, yeah.
the oral exam. So that was not clear.
Oh no, I meant the whole online course. I didn't
right,
say that.
Right. So
okay.
yeah. So wait. The question was message to your college colleagues.
Focusing on the exam, right? This is all about the exam. It's
No,
not
no,
about
you
the full
can say
experience.
the online course was this, but you said just it, and I thought this was all negative. What followed, and I
Because
said,
if
Okay.
we use that just soundbite, it doesn't really have
Okay.
context.
right.
So let me try to remember what I said.
Message to your college colleagues.
So as a message to my your college colleagues, I would say that this is worth trying. It may.
No, what's this, but this is worth trying, so whatever this is, say,
Okay. See, because now I'm trying to remember what I said. I wasn't at all, man.
Message
Okay.
to your college
that was done.
colleagues regarding for trying out this oral
Oral
exam
examination.
through Blackboard Collaborate.
Mhm. So, as a message to your colleague about testing this different way of gauging the knowledge of our students, I think it's completely worth it. First of all, it's probably going to take you less time than grading midterms and finals. It's going to also allow you to have some flexibility, and in many ways, I think I felt like the students that an online course is kind of impersonal and aseptic, and it gives you the chance to meet your students and to see if maybe they need some support, because in the end we're educators. We want to be here teaching, we want the students to learn. And meeting them in person allows you also to see, again, this person is second language student, so maybe I want to approach the pedagogy in a different way. In fact, I would like to expand the whole meeting up. I'm sorry.
I thought you need water. You need water.
I know. I was trying to keep on going and I was dying.
I heard it. I heard it.
You are doing just absolutely great, isn't it?
I'm a natural.
No, you really are.
no, you really are.
You
Really?
really are.
Absolutely. You should be on stage, seriously.
Yeah, you know, I don't do stage. People make more money than professors. What's the story? I think that's a guy.
Really, really good. My God, I can barely think like where we should cut.
It's pretty good.
Okay. So, what's it? Not the
Okay, let's
copyright.
start
What's
again.
the royalties?
Because this is
Well, for this, bad news.
so again with the message to your college colleagues.
Okay. Sorry. Let me see if I can talk normally. Okay, I think we're back to normal. As a message to my York colleagues, I would encourage you to try this different way of testing the knowledge of your students. From a practical point of view, now that I've done the final and I learned the tricks, it's going to take you so much less time than actually grading the finals or the midterms. There's no paperwork, first of all, so you're not carrying it anyway, so that's great on its own. And you also have the chance to see your students and from a pedagogical point of view, see what their needs are. Again, I was surprised when I saw what the difference is when you are asking questions to a second language students and you're realizing that the knowledge is there, but they may not be able to express it in the classic written exam. I also think it's important. We're all educators. We really want our students to learn what we're teaching. It's not just about the testing. The testing is because we really want them to know the material that we're teaching. And you're going to have the chance to see if they know it or not. And if I have the chance to teach the course again, I definitely want to increase the possibility, the chances to meet them up. So I would like to make it mandatory that the first week the students will meet with me so that I can start to know them. I will create more chances before I get to the midterm and the final to meet online with them, through collaborate, and ask them some of the questions, get them used to this different environment, this different way of taking the test. So the one that are a little shy, that are not comfortable, maybe speak a second language, will get used to it. And again, you have a chance. It doesn't need to be overwhelmingly like an in-class experience, but you can meet with them. You can create opportunities for them to get more comfortable, for you to see how you can be a better educator, a better teacher, to make sure that they learn the material, which again, it's really what our goal is. And we forget it sometimes because now it's final times, and you know, you're all thinking about just putting in the grades, these practical things that sometimes kind of make us forget why we're doing this, why we're passionate about this.
Thank you, Dr. Diotti.
And we're actually, can we get like, what, a minute of room tone?
Yeah, just a minute.
So, yeah,
What?
it's, so like when we edit it, there'll be little spaces in between where there's no sound, so we need the sound of the room. So
Yeah.
can you just sit for a second, please?
Just sit and stare
Yeah. Just a minute of silence.
meaningfully. Well, I'm Italian. Minute of silence is a hard one. I'm gonna try.